Funding for the Nashvillager podcast comes from the Hal Allen Clinic, specializing in minimally invasive robotic spine surgery and laser brain tumor surgery. For 40 years, the neurosurgeons of the Hal Allen Clinic have been national leaders in brain and spine surgery.
This podcast is made possible by you, the supporters of WPLN and WNXP, Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager podcast. It's August 4th, 2025. On this day in 1994, radio shock jock Howard Stern ended his bid for governor of New York. He was the Libertarian Party nominee on a simple platform. Stern said he wanted three things for the state, and if he were elected, he'd resign once he achieved all three goals. Those were to reinstate the death penalty, get rid of highway tolls, and bar road construction crews from working during the day. But ultimately, Stern quit before the election even happened because he didn't like the state's campaign disclosure requirements. He told audiences he had decided at the beginning of his career in radio that he would never tell anyone how much money he made or how much he had in the bank. And the headline in the New York Times when he pulled out of the race summed it up this way. For Stern, it's bulk radio. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your Daily Digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Last week, NBC News broke the story that one Tennessee resident who made his name as a media personality might be exploring a campaign to become this state's governor. Now, this is the kind of reports based on unnamed sources talking about behind-the-scenes conversations, so, take it as you will. But NBC did put 4 reporters on it to flush out as much information as they could. And they landed on evidently feeling pretty confident reporting that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is eyeing the Tennessee governor's office. Now, his first 6 months on President Trump's cabinet have hardly been smooth. He's been accused of all sorts of problems in his personal life, including sexual misconduct, drinking too much, financial problems, treating his second wife poorly. And as for his work at the DOD, some have called his management style chaotic. Hegseth doesn't always seem to even be on the same page with the president. 3 times he suspended aid to Ukraine, only for the White House to reverse the decision. And of course, Hegseth reportedly shared classified information on non-secure channels with people who shouldn't know those details, including a reporter. So it may not be surprising that he's possibly thinking of some way to leave a job that isn't necessarily working out like he hoped it would. But governor of Tennessee? Well, first of all, if he does run, it won't be his first political campaign. Back in 2012, Hegseth challenged Amy Klobuchar for her U.S. Senate seat. Minnesota is Hegseth's home state. And at the time, he was a non-active duty captain in the National Guard who had just returned from a tour of duty in Afghanistan, and he was running an organization for military veterans who were in favor of U.S. involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan. Hegseth eventually decided to pull out of that race when it was clear he wouldn't win. 2 years later, he landed a spot on Fox News as a contributor and eventually as a host. For 8 years, that took most of his focus, until he became the first announced nominee to the second Trump cabinet. During his time at Fox, about 3 years ago, Hegseth decided to take advantage of the fact that he only needed to be in the network studios in person 2 days a week. And he and his wife moved their 7 children to a small farm in Sumner County. And that home base is the reason Tennessee is being floated as the place he might run for office. But if that really is what Hegseth wants to do, there's at least one really big hurdle in his way. To run for governor in this state, you first have to live here for at least 7 years. The next time we elect a governor, which will be next year, he'll still be 3 years shy of that requirement. And perhaps when he first moved here, he caught some of the uproar at that time about another political race where residency came into play. Back in 2022, it was the first congressional election since the state legislature redistricted to divide Nashville between 3 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. The District 5 seat that had long been held by Nashville Democrats was a prize that a lot of Republicans wanted to take. A bunch of local GOP names were on the list of primary contenders, and a few folks who just moved here wanted to run too. Megan Ortegas had been one of Hegseth's co-workers at Fox, working there as a national security commentator. She'd moved to Germantown a year prior, and conservative activist Robbie Starbuck was a newcomer to the area too, although he'd been here a couple of years longer than Ortegas. Both decided to run for the seat. Now, the state's Republican establishment was not happy about getting that level of interest from folks they considered outsiders. They hadn't worked for so many years to put Nashville's congressional seat in reach, only for someone from outside the state to come in and take it. Even if a candidate shared their views on just about everything, being a Tennessean was just as important a qualification to them as being GOP. And so, in the spring of 2022, the state legislature voted overwhelmingly to approve a law creating a 3-year residency requirement for running in a congressional primary. Advocating for passage on the Senate floor, sponsor Frank Nicely said he was trying to block an invasion of carpetbaggers, or making a dig that seemed specifically aimed at Ortegas, Gucci baggers. Ortegas and Starbuck were both kicked off the ballot. Starbuck did challenge that in court and ended up running as a write-in candidate. Former Murray County Mayor Andy Ogles ended up winning the seat. Now, regardless of whether Pete Hegseth truly has been considering a gubernatorial run, it sure seems like it wouldn't be legally possible for him to get on the 2026 ballot here. And there are 2 longtime Tennesseans in his party who definitely feel like they've put in the time to deserve a spot in that primary. U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn has indicated she intends to run for the governor's office, and so does current Congressman John Rose. In just a few minutes, the question of medical ethics at the heart of the execution that is scheduled to take place tomorrow. That's coming up after the newscast.
Funding for the Nashvillager podcast comes from the Hal Allen Clinic, specializing in minimally invasive robotic spine surgery and laser brain tumor surgery. For 40 years, the neurosurgeons of the Hal Allen Clinic have been national leaders in brain and spine surgery.
You know how important WPLN News has been to you and your family, and you have seen how high-quality local journalism is necessary to a thriving community. You can ensure that this service stays strong and stays available to all of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Join the Producer's Circle with your gift of $100 or more each month and make the bold statement that you support the mission of a more informed and engaged community. Start your philanthropic journey with Nashville Public Radio today at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Nashville's mayor says the governor was transparent with him about the new underground tunnel planned for the city, but he still has questions. Last week, Elon Musk's The Boring Company announced a plan to dig a tunnel from downtown Nashville to the airport, following roughly the path of Murfreesboro Pike. An underground fleet of Teslas will connect travelers with the airport in a ride the company says will take 8 minutes. While various state leaders, like the governor and House Speaker Cameron Sexton, took part in the unveiling event, Mayor Freddie O'Connell was notably absent. His office released a statement saying he had questions about the project's impact. On Friday, O'Connell said many of those have to do with safety.
I do want to make sure that we've got surface integrity for the Murfreesboro Pike corridor so that while they're doing things to ensure underground integrity, that we don't miss any opportunities on the surface to improve sidewalks, improve transit service levels, all those kinds of things.
The mayor said Metro has an operational and safety team working with the Boring Company to ask questions. He also said he wants to ensure the project's construction is not disruptive. A neo-Nazi who assaulted Nashvillians last summer is now sentenced to 45 months in prison. Last year, Ryan McCann came to the city with an anti-Semitic hate group called the Goyim Defense League. In 2 separate downtown incidents, both of which were recorded in videos, members of the group provoked people with slurs and verbal abuse until they got into arguments. Then McCann physically attacked the victims. Earlier this summer, he was found guilty of assault for attacking a man with Jewish heritage in a parking lot. And last week, the Tennessean reports a judge sentenced him to 3 years in prison for that offense. Separately, McCann pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor assault for using a flagpole to hit a bartender on Lower Broadway. For that, McCann is sentenced to an additional 9 months behind bars. Tennessee schools are rolling out their updated cell phone policies to comply with a new state law banning the devices during classroom instruction. One public charter school in Antioch is taking it a step further, banning phones for the entire day. Sean Brown, assistant principal of Independence Academy, says the move was necessary to help kids focus and build better social skills.
And so now the teachers are really competing, not just with the idea of contacting an individual like you want to have a phone call, but also all the social media apps and anything else that might be buzzing and going off. Like all of that is competing with whatever instruction is going on in the room.
Students will have to lock their phones away in special pouches. And unlike many other schools across Tennessee, they can't even access them during lunch or in between classes.
It's a hard conversation to have as a teacher to say, like, put your phone away every 2 seconds, or to ask them to give you your phone, which is, I don't recommend trying to ask a teenager to hand you their phone in class. So, like, having a system to where phones go somewhere and they're out of sight, or at least they can't be accessed, is helpful.
Kids who break the rule will not have their phones returned to them directly. Rather, a parent must come to school to get the device. You can hear the full conversation about the new cell phone policies on the This Is Nashville podcast. An electricity group in West Tennessee wants to build a gas-powered plant near Memphis. The Tennessee Electric Cooperative Association, which is a big group of co-ops, is pitching the plant. The group would buy power from the Tennessee Valley Authority, but could produce a small amount of its own power. They're looking at an industrial site near Ford's electric vehicle plant called Blue Oval City. Environmental groups have recently opposed other gas proposals in the area because their use causes pollution and climate change. Gas is the largest source of electricity in the U.S. and currently causes about twice the greenhouse gas emissions of coal each year. A nuclear company based out of France will not have to pay state or local sales taxes for its new facility in Tennessee. The company Orano is planning a $4.5 billion project to enrich uranium in Oak Ridge. Tennessee lawmakers passed legislation this spring to exempt nuclear facilities from taxes. The Tennessee Lookout reports that local officials in Oak Ridge were unaware of the tax exemptions. The exemptions mean the city and county will not get what would have been a potentially large source of revenue. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. There's been a legal battle over how Tennessee will carry out the execution of a man with a heart implant designed to revive him. The state's highest court has thus far ruled that the lethal injection will go forward tomorrow. WPLN health reporter Catherine Sweeney tells us ethical codes in medicine have been part of the debate over how to disable the device and prevent a painful death.
Byron Black is scheduled to be executed on August 5th after being convicted of a triple homicide in 1989. One of his health challenges has led to a messy legal situation. In short, a county judge said the Tennessee Department of Correction had to bring in a doctor to disable his heart implant, which could dole out painful shocks as he dies. On Thursday, the state Supreme Court said that order is now invalid because it was too rigid to follow, making it similar to a stay of execution. They did leave the door open to finding some way to disable the implant.
You're going to have a very hard time finding a doctor who says it's okay for physicians to act as agents of the state and kill people.
This is medical ethicist Dr. Matthew Winia at the University of Colorado. The state of Tennessee said it had a medical plan to disable the device involving Nashville General Hospital, but leadership there now says it never signed off. Since that has unraveled, Winia says it's unlikely any doctor could be persuaded to play a role.
You could conceivably say, well, we disable these things all the time for patients. So I could imagine someone drawing, a way around this in some way. But in the current case, it's almost impossible now because it's very clear that the reason you're doing this is to facilitate execution.
Facilitating the state's efforts to kill someone. That's a major distinction, he says, and one of the biggest differences between aiding in an execution and physician-assisted death for voluntary terminal patients. But in Black's case specifically, disabling the device would be to avoid pain. Would that make a difference?
It absolutely makes sense. I mean, this is why Dr. Guillotine invented the guillotine, right? The unfortunate result of that is the medicalization and the sort of false humanity of killing someone.
He said if the state were concerned about pain alone, it wouldn't be using the lethal injection or other modern methods.
There are rapid ways to kill someone that are very humane to the individual being killed, right? A guillotine primary among them. But the reason the state keeps coming to physicians asking for our help is because people feel uncomfortable watching someone die that way.
Doctors do act as medical witnesses in capital cases often, even discussing the science of different execution methods. But Winia says there's a difference between that and participating. He pointed to a 2018 U.S. Supreme Court case.
Case 178151, Bucklew versus Precythe.
This inmate also had unique health challenges.
A well-documented and extremely uncommon medical condition that will very likely cause his execution to involve severe harm and suffering.
The state was assessing which execution method would inflict the least pain on him. A medical expert explained the anatomy, but refused to endorse a method. In response, the American Medical Association weighed into the court, supporting that doctor's neutrality, and compiled relevant positions from several medical groups. For example, the American Public Health Association had explicitly said pre-execution procedures were a violation of its ethical codes.
Every medical group of any kind that has ever looked at this, including the American Correctional Medical Association, they all come down on the same side of this. This is an area where consensus is very strong.
Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
Byron Black's attorneys are asking the Tennessee Supreme Court for a stay of execution, citing TDOC's failure to find a medical provider. We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. A little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener-supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.
Funding for the Nash Villager podcast comes from the Hal Allen Clinic, specializing in minimally invasive robotic spine surgery and laser brain tumor surgery. For 40 years, the neurosurgeons of the Hal Allen Clinic have been national leaders in brain and spine surgery.